Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another amazing edition of the Over Sharon Show. We have another guest today, but before we get into that, I'm going to read the quote, and then Sharon, the lovely Sharon, is going to pull a card. Today's quote is, "We can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light." And that's by Socrates, or Socrates. However you'd wish to pronounce that.
Yeah. What were we talking about yesterday, Brandon? About something about coming out of the light from the darkness or something like that?
Probably.
Didn't you say something about that?
I'll have to think about it. I've been talking so much. If you guys haven't seen it, go check out my Brandon Bonanza live stream. I've been doing that twice a week. That's been really, really fun and interesting. I've been having all kinds of people on there. So check her out.
Sweet. All right.
What deck you got?
Morgan Greer.
Ooh. All right.
All right. The Chariot. Dude, I just pulled this for Zaralath.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There's the duality.
All right, there we go. Oh, yeah. I have you pinned now so we could see big screen. Oh, I like his little, I don't know if those are earrings or like his shoulders. They're moons. That's pretty cool.
They're just moons. Yeah. Oops, sorry.
And two fat horses. I love it. Or muscular anyway.
Cool.
That's cool. Yeah, that's one of my cards because I'm a 7-2 guy.
Yeah. Yeah, so
awesome. Well, the Chariot I think is great in context to this show because it is really about moving forward, about using the dark and the light, like we just talked about, in conjunction and moving them forward. So it's a nice little synchronicity there. And there could be problems too when you're trying to move forward, getting alignment with the dark and the light and trying to exactly walk the right path. So I think that's what that card is all about. And 7s also have to do with perfection. So great card. And it's a major arcana.
Nice. What comes to mind whenever I think of moving forward with the light and the dark in mind is that darkness is like receptivity and then light is like emanation. So we have to learn how to balance those. We have to balance our receptivity. A lot of people who find themselves overly receptive tend to become passive. And then people that are overly emanating tend to be controlling. And these are at the very, very extremes. Of course, it's a bit more of a wavelength. Like it's not, you're not necessarily at one extreme or the other, but those can tend to be expressions of those extremes.
Yeah, I love that. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that reminds me of like the feminine masculine, right? Because you said the passiveness and then I don't remember if you said aggressiveness or whatever you said, but like, yeah, it's that feminine masculine thing too going on. And it reminds me of some stuff that I talked to Chance about yesterday during I had a session with Chance.
Nice.
And yeah, it went really well and just very synchronistic, but we definitely talked about the feminine side, like receiving, like being okay to receive. And then the masculine side is the giving part. So yeah, it was really, really cool.
Yeah. And one of the cool things about the healthy balance of masculine and feminine is that the masculine gives a safe space for there to be receptivity, for the message to be received. And I think that's something that people are calling out for in the culture, is a safe space to be receptive. But then also it's fallen into this area of passivity instead of just receptivity, because once the message has been received, like you also have to go out and do work with it. Like faith without works is dead. So you still have to be able to move forward in the light of that knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. It reminds me a lot when you were saying that of the New Age movement versus like Western religious churchianity, Christianity. It's like it's two different traps, I believe, that people can get caught in. But anyhow, I'd like to introduce our guest. His name is James, or AKA Brother Nature Bear, on the Beartari Times app. And I met him
Family Fungi.
Of Family Fungi. Yes, that's right. And I met him through the Beartari Times app. He seemed like a really cool dude. I loved his name, Brother Nature Bear. It's kind of like almost like a pun, which come from the Over Sharon show. We enjoy puns. And why don't you tell people where they could find you right up front? So this way, we're going to have the links in the description below, but just in case they're listening or whatever.
Yeah, probably the most public and accessible one is Instagram. You can find us at Family Fungi on Instagram. You can find us on our website, familyfungi.net, and you can contact us through there. We have our shop on there, so you can see all of the things that we make, our products. We have a blog and recipes, and we're continuing to put more content on there. Our website's only been up for about a year, so we're still in the early developmental stages of it to really be able to showcase everything that we offer, because it's at our home, we live on our mushroom farm. So like, I'm in the main building of our mushroom farm right now, and I'm facing the wall. This is my lab right behind the computer, and then this is our incubation space. And so like, we also live here, so that's like part of it, is that this is like a homestead, but it's also our mushroom farm. This is kind of what puts wind in our sails. The app that Brandon was talking about, the Beartari Times app, you can find me there as well at Brother Nature Bear, and I'm also on Telegram at Brother Nature Bear as well. The whole name, I actually met a guy who referred to himself as Brother Nature, and he was just a super cool individual. It was in passing, perfect timing, and I think it was actually in Mount Shasta, California, and I met him, and he was just really nice, very kind guy. For whatever reason, he stuck out in my mind whenever I wanted to come up with a bear name, because I've been deeply connecting back to the land and nature and intuition, a lot of things that masculine energy tends to be cut off from. And I think that Chance and Gabriel breaking down a lot of stuff regarding the removal of the placenta is an area worth looking into, because that there's something energetically going on with why the placenta, the afterbirth, and all of this is removed from the family. So that's, I know I just kind of like hit that straight into the weeds.
I love it. I want to talk about that when we get there.
Cool.
Yeah, we're just over sharing. That's what we tell people. We just let you go.
Wonderful.
There's not much of a real story about how we met. We just kind of nerded out on each other. We're like, oh, that's cool, man. It seemed like we had a lot of stuff in common.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that you did actually in person meet one person on our show, which is Sharon.
Yeah, and I saw you, and I've listened to bits and pieces of a couple of y'all's episodes. And whenever I saw you, I was like, I got to go give her a hug. Like that was the first thing that I thought. And so it was great getting to meet you at the Beartari Times National Festival. The whole festival was an absolutely wonderful place to be. Everyone had the perfect attitude for dealing with the mud, the rain. It wasn't even a big deal. It was so fun to see the community come together, and like someone gets stuck and like 15 dudes just walk out from different places and just start pushing someone out of the mud. And it was just such a fun time, and getting to see how this community has knitted itself together, because it didn't happen from like one particular individual, but it was everyone starting to form this larger relationship to make something work and give the bears another organ in the body. Like we're creating this organism together that is the bear community, and that was just like another emanation of what we have all been doing and connecting through the internet.
Yes, it was lovely. I wasn't there for that Friday in the mud, in the rain and the mud. I had been in St. Louis because that's where I'd arrived. And so Cody, who's Dell, and I think he's Dell Paxton on Bertaria, and then Spoons, she and I, we all three of us met in St. Louis, and then we were hanging out, and people were reporting that it was raining and it was muddy and it was just really tough. So we're like, well, it's only sprinkling here in St. Louis, so we'll just chill, we'll hang out, and then we'll head over. So we didn't get into the camp area until like later in the evening, but we stayed off site, like we weren't on site. So we didn't experience the muddy campgrounds either until the morning. Well, I would say afternoon, because we were practicing we were practicing with the band on the next morning, Saturday morning, and then we showed up probably sometime in the afternoon on Saturday. So we were only really there for like a day and a half. But it felt like a good long while. It felt really fun. It went by fast and it went by slow at the same time. It's so bizarre.
Right. It's like you would walk into a conversation that felt like it was eternity, and then you'd blink and then the sun's going down.
Yeah. It was really awesome to meet a ton of you guys, and in person. Really good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's how you and I met. And I guess we can just dive into whatever we want to talk about here. And you mentioned, I guess we can start with what you were talking about earlier, is this well, you know what, maybe we can talk about your stuff first. Like, tell us about your tell us about like kind of what you do. You kind of briefly said, but some of the products that you offer, and then maybe I'll have some questions for you, and then we can dive into like the stuff that you were talking about with the whole placenta stuff. That's very, very interesting to me.
Cool. Yeah. So we grow edible and medicinal mushrooms. All of our edible mushrooms we sell at our local market. We do the farmers markets on Saturdays. We have a large distributor that we sell the bulk of our mushrooms to, and a couple of restaurants buy mushrooms from us as well. And then we also grow the medicinal mushrooms. So these are mushrooms like reishi and lion's mane and turkey tail, and shiitake. And these are those four, along with chaga, are mushrooms that we put in our remedy mushroom extracts. And so these extracts are 5 mushrooms working synergistically to reduce inflammation, to help support your body's natural detoxification processes. They're chock full of antioxidants and so many other things. Like each individual mushroom has its own merits, but we put them together for and the name of it is remedy. It's for putting your body in balance. I thought that I had some close, but if you check on our website, you'll see the image of it is balanced scales, and it's a potent symbol to seed the subconscious with balancing ourselves. And so I have a blog on our website. It's Remedy Rebalance from Within. That's really where we're arriving at societally, is that we're waking up to the fact that we've been strip mining our soils just for minerals. And basically our food nowadays is very low mineral content, or if there are minerals, then they're unavailable. So low mineral availability or low mineral content, and they're just chock full of water. So there's not, so all that's being done is that we're filling bellies, but we're not satiating or nourishing bodies. And so this can show up especially in a lot of folks my age now, is like dental diseases or having trouble with their teeth. A lot of people have trouble with their teeth, and it's because we're not eating foods with minerals in them, and we don't have this connection to the land that we used to. And we used to inform the land by putting our composted wastes back into the land, and therefore our information from our bodies inform the microbiome of the soil, and then that soil grows our food, which then informs us back. We form this greater relationship. Well, that seems to have gone away at this point, and we're finding ourselves having to rebalance that and remedy that. Because when we strip mine the soils out there, we strip mine the soils in there. Our microbiome inside of ourselves has become completely imbalanced for most of our lives, especially for people that may or may not have been breastfed. You may not have even been inoculated with the culture that you're supposed to get. And then also, we can kind of touch a little bit about placentophagy, is that if your mom was consuming your placenta, you would have been getting some sort of information to form yourself, to bring yourself into form. You would have been getting some sort of information from her doing that and you being breastfed. I was almost exclusively, I think my mom said that she may have pumped for me, but I wasn't breastfed. I was a formula baby. I was born in 92. So 90s babies were just, you give them a bottle and then you give them a screen, let the screens raise them. You send them off to school. Luckily, I was homeschooled, but I still got stuck in front of public broadcasting. And so my whole ethos with what we create as a product is really, I started looking at ways that I was out of balance. And I started looking at myself sort of as the petri dish, because I was studying micromolecular biology. I wasn't looking at a telescope, but I was basically doing this all day long and looking to make sense of the macro from the micro. And I started to look at my own experience as that as well, and how to shift my experience back to something more natural. That's not that's not so much reliant on someone else to provide the nourishment that my soul is seeking, my soil is seeking. And so we have that tincture. We have medicinal mushrooms that we have as well, like reishi and lion's mane and turkey tail and shiitake. Those are things that we offer on our website. And those are things that we can grow. We can't grow chaga. Chaga is an obligate parasite of birch trees and some of the related species to birch. So those are something that has to be foraged for and should be done ethically, because they can be over harvested. But I really tell people the solution's already there. It's like whenever you're harvesting it, you can take a fresh chunk of chaga and make a poultice, and then make some cuts in some younger birch trees and take some of that poultice and rub it in the wounds. And then it's like inoculating the forest to keep the seeds going forward.
That's awesome.
Wow.
But these are some of the powerful medicinal mushrooms that we include in our in our products. And a lot of people find such great benefit just from reducing inflammation and supporting their natural immune system. It's like an orchestra. Your body is always interacting and interfacing with the environment. There's not a time where you're not getting some sort of signal from the environment. Like my family over the past probably 10 days, we've been getting over this this congested, and it kind of got into like upper respiratory, but it's just like it's all productive and making mucus and all this stuff, and all this stuff's coming out, but we're just cleansing. That's just this time of the year. Some people break a fever with it, some people don't. Some people may have a higher toxic load, so it takes a longer time for them to move this stuff along. But we specifically partner with these medicinal plants and herbs and fungi to help assist that natural process.
That's awesome. So you have these mushrooms in what kind of form are they? Because I know some people buy them in powdered form. And how do you sell them?
So we sell powders. We also sell the dried fruit bodies. So the fruit body is the actual mushroom itself, what we consider to be the mushroom. And then in our powders, we do include the mycelium with the fruit body. So the mycelium is more of the body of the mushroom. That's actually the longest stage of the life cycle of a mushroom is mycelium. And in that stage, the mushroom is eating and breaking down whatever the substrate is. So the fungi, whatever it is, say lion's mane, is growing out on hardwood sawdust, and it's eating that. But while it's eating it, so our digestive system is internal. Well, their digestive system is external. So instead of putting the environment into itself, like we take an apple from the environment and put it into ourselves, they put themselves into the environment. So they secrete enzymes and metabolites into the substrate that they're digesting, and then they move their body and grow into their enzymes, into their metabolites and stuff. It's real interesting. But that those metabolites, you do not get those exometabolites. You do not get those if you're just consuming fruit bodies. And so my understanding is that it's better to have some of the mycelium and some of the fruit body, because you would only be able to get any of the mycelium if you were like taking a chunk of the tree that you're getting the mushroom off of, and then maybe scraping that part off and making a tea out of it. That's approximately what you could do. But if you're growing it the same way that we grow other fungi on like rice and on to brew beer and stuff like this, the way that we grow these other fungi, you can capture the mycelium in a liquid culture. Like if you're making beer, it's basically making a liquid culture of Saccharomyces cerevisiae, this yeast, or a solid culture or a solid state fermentation where you're doing it on a grain. And so we do it on gluten-free grains like sorghum, millet, rice, and oats, and we'll grow it out on there, and then we'll either use that to put into sawdust, or we'll allow that to start fruiting in the bag, dry that, and then make that into powders and either encapsulate it or leave it as a powder. Sometimes we've been making gluten-free lion's mane pancake mix, which is awesome, and we'll include that in the pancake mix. That way you can get the medicinal benefits of lion's mane from some pancakes, and it's great for kids. Cool. Yeah, it's super easy, super cool. I was actually serving those at the Bertaria Times Festival. I was serving the lion's mane pancakes and lion's mane coffee, and we had freshly roasted green coffee beans and ground them before we left with our lion's mane. And I was serving a short stack and a cup of coffee. And I ran out of that.
I didn't get to try
Sunday.
It. Dang it.
Yeah. I ran out by Sunday, and I brought like 7 dozen eggs with me, and I ended up cooking people eggs, and I brought some sausage, and I was just like, had a diner and just like talking to bears and wonderful people all day. And being able to serve them breakfast, it was really fun.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And the one thing that I picked up from what you said is you were in a process of trying to heal yourself, to balance yourself, right? To somehow make yourself better. And you started to share that with the world, just like we were talking about earlier, when you could get stuck in either of these phases, the dark or the light, or the feminine or masculine, or whatever you want to call them. That's the one stage that we talk about too, which is like, if you look at it in the trivium, it's your rhetoric, right? It's like what you're speaking to the world or what you're showing the world. And that's what we do here on the Over Sharon show from all the stuff we've learned. And that's what I do, like when I write a book or whatever. So I love that we have that in common, because I feel like so many people don't know what they want to do, but it's like, well, this is what I say, look within, balance yourself. And then whatever comes out of that, then you could help other people, whether it's food or whether it's, nutrients, or whether it's just gravy for the mind,
Yeah, man. A ton of people need the gravy too. And that's the thing. It's like, it's not, you don't have to do everything, but you do have to do something. And you should pick something that is going to heal yourself, whether you want to look at it as you're healing ancestral trauma, blah, 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 whatever. If you start with yourself, then you've already healed all the ancestral trauma, because if you're healed, then you're not going to carry it forward. That's it. You don't have to go make amends for the mistakes of someone else, or anything like that. Like you're not the world's savior. You're your own. Save yourself. The guy that came here to save the world already did it. You got that. So let's go ahead with, how do we balance ourselves? Because I just got here. That's how I still wake up and I'm like, okay, I'm 29, I'll be 30 next month. And I feel like I just got here. Like I just got to class right on time. And I'm like, but I don't know what's going on. I look around, other people don't know what's going on, but they're like, okay, but this is the thing that we do. I'm like, but is that the best thing? It like makes people feel soulless by the time they're 40. Like, why are we going to keep doing that? And it's like, well, I just got here too. And that's what everyone was doing. It's like, oh, so you feel like you just got here and you're just doing what everyone was doing when you just got here. Well, I'm not going to do that, because that seems to breed mental disease, physical disease. And that was basically my starting point with, I started through self-inquiry, and I ate psilocybe cubensis mushrooms and asked these questions. And basically, I tell people, they're like, why do you do this? And depending on who I'm talking to, I'll feel them out. I'm like, the mushrooms told me to do it. I'm like, and some people I'll say, God told me to do it. You know, for me, the message, irrespective of the source, I know that the source told me that this is the thing that I'm going to do. And so I defer to that, to the one authority above. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm growing mushrooms, and I just try to learn and do my best along the way. I was very caught up in being intellectual. I wanted to be a good little boy, and I wanted to get all the gold stars and you know, get all my accolades in order, and everyone be like, oh, good job, you. And at some point I saw through that and saw how vapid it is, and that even the people that have all the certificates, all the gold stars, all the good job, didn't really know. They didn't know, and their investment in the intellect actually ripped away their spirit, because they started to look at things so mechanistically and so materialistically that they became solely materialistic. And in so doing, they took their soul out of it. And because I have conversations with people, they tell me, I don't know why I did this. It's just the thing that I did. It's what people told me to do. Get a 401k, get a retirement plan. Come on, benefits. Like, people told me to go to work for the state for benefits. And it's like, but you didn't give it a second thought past that? And so I saw how shallow and egotistical what I was going towards was. And at some point I had a major shift, and I don't really know a definable point, but it was around my 24th birthday. I just had to do something other than what I was doing. And I dropped out of college because they didn't have the program that I wanted to study, which was mycology. And it was either I go out of state and pay out of state tuition, or teach myself. So I started to teach myself. I was already being prepared for graduate school, and I knew how to read studies. So I just started reading. I did the thing that a lot of people have gotten away from, or people only want to read like short tidbits, taglines, headlines. That's the only attention span some folks have. But I was in it for the gravy. I was like, what pattern recognition? Like, if people have been using a reishi mushroom for over 2,000 years, why? And it grows right around us. Why? And why aren't we using it? Scientists are still looking at it. Science is still looking at it to see if it's exploitable, but we're not looking at it as a valuable ally that we can partner with. And so I just started to see through the ideas that people had around conclusive science or conclusive knowledge. Like, the main things that I can come back to and actually feel some sense of security in and knowledge are the principles. And so whether it's the Hermetic principles or the principles of a system that I'm learning, if I know the principles, then I can ace the game. I get it. But if I'm too caught up in the details of the narration of the story of how the game goes for a particular character, like if I get too invested in myself, then I'm going to lose the point of why I was a self at all, to come here and be here. I'm not just here for myself. Like, I have 2 children, I have my wife, but then I have my community at large, and it's up to me to determine my character. I'm writing my role. And so how am I going to write that? I can't look towards society, because it's crazy to try to get a role model from society. There's no way. And I didn't really have one. My father wasn't a good one, and I didn't have my grandfathers both died whenever I was young. So I didn't and I didn't have and my father didn't have any brothers, so I didn't have any uncles. So I was like, where do I look for masculine energy? And I ended up finding how to balance those things in myself through the mushroom, and ultimately things that I had kind of looked down on, I'm like going back to teach myself now. Like, growing up, I thought that I was going to go be a doctor, and I very well could have. At some point it struck me that wasn't going to be the path. But at one point I was like, yeah, I'm going to go be a doctor. And, I don't want to be a welder. Now I'm trying to teach myself how to weld. Like, it's ridiculous, because it's just so funny. The culture that I grew up in was like, go to college. That's the answer. There's your savior. Job security, like smooth as butter. And then you get into college and you're like, wait a second, this is like extended vacation school. Like, what? But it's like, it makes no sense. And so I'm definitely into the oversharing part.
No,
Awesome.
It's great. And quickly, if you want to learn more about how to weld, our friend Philip, or Weldon Barrett, is a welding teacher. So, and he lives in Alabama, and I think he has family in Louisiana. So
Yeah.
I'm going to have to connect with him. Is he on the app?
Yeah. Weld
Cool.
and bear it.
And he sometimes pops up in the chat when we do these, when we premiere these every Thursday night at 8:33 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. People come check him out when we do it, and we hang out in the chat. But yeah, I'll put him in contact with you. He's also on Telegram as well. Just remind me later if I forget. But yeah, no, I love everything you're saying, because it really reminds me of my own journey, and even the stuff I write about, which is like, people are taught to receive all their validation from exterior sources. And so they want to be the good little boy or good little girl and get the pat on the head and the cookie. And then as they get older, it's the same thing. So, people talk about the they and the them at the top, but I see just people at the bottom, just everyday people going along with what everybody thinks they should do for themselves. I faced that a lot as growing up, because I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years, and then I got out and I was going to go to college. And I started selling cars because there was this explosion going on, and my friend was in it, and I did really well. And I stayed in that realm for about 8 years. And then I got into the DJing realm in my early 30s, and I found that I was really skilled at it and I was doing well. But then people would ask me like, oh, are you going to get like a real job, or what about like your retirement or your 401k? And so I was like, all right. So then I started doing stand-up comedy, and they're like, whoa. And I'm like, I'll just be homeless if I have to. I'm already a vet, so I'm already trained perfectly for it. A lot of vets become homeless anyway. I'm like, I'll just go down to South Beach and be homeless. It'd be amazing. So, yeah. It's like I would say to people when they would say, you should go to the doctor. I'm like, if I ever am sick, just leave me in the woods. I've been saying this like since the mid 2000s. I'm like, just bring me to a field and leave me in the woods. If it's a car accident, it's different, whatever. But like, if it's an illness, just leave me in the woods. I'll be fine.
Just give you a knife and a lighter, dude.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be good. So, Sharon, is there anything you wanted to say on all that gravy? I felt like that was just gravy. I loved it.
Yeah, that was really good. I do want to talk about some other stuff in a bit, but I was just going to say that when you were on Crow that first time, and I don't know if you've been on again, but the first time I heard you on Crow, I think you were, because I did listen to that. Yeah, you were recently. I don't know where my head's at. So anyway, the first time though, you said you were from Louisiana, I think. So I did tell Philip Weldon Barrett, I told him about you out there, because I'm like, he's out there in Louisiana, and I know Philip had family out there. So yeah.
Well, now that he's interested in welding, it might even be a little more,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
dude, it's a whole rabbit hole. Every time I start learning about something like building this business, I've had to teach myself the stuff that I really do feel men should have been taught by their fathers. Like, I didn't know how to wire a light switch or an outlet, and now I'm like, why don't people? It's so easy. Why is it not taught in like 5th, 6th, 7th grade? Like, by the time you're 8, you should definitely know how to do it. It's simple, but people are like, electricity's magic. You can't touch it, but if it touches you, it'll kill you. So, there's a healthy respect for the trade and the craft of it, but also people should be confident. So my wife and I were on Crow recently, and she was on the first hour, and she was talking about natural birth and about our most recent son, our second son, Emmanuel. He was born here in this building in the bathroom.
Nice.
And it was just her and I. We had our first son with a midwife, and it was oddly still very medicalized. And in Louisiana, midwives have to have a license to practice. You can't have a midwife go to someone's house, but you could have medical training and go to someone's house, obviously. But in the system, they frown upon that. And you can't be advertising yourself or merchandising yourself. These are all very particular words. You cannot be doing those things. You can't advertise that you're a midwife. But there are obviously ways that you can describe yourself other than that. And so we had a midwife for Ja's birth, and we paid out of pocket for it. There's no insurance to cover midwives in Louisiana, at least. And after we paid out of pocket for it and saw the service that we got, all we really got was an illusion of safety and peace of mind. Because if anything were to happen, at least you'll have a midwife there. If anything were to happen, at least the hospital is there. Dude, it's all an illusion. It's more in your hands and in especially the woman's hands and in her partner's hands, in her husband's hands, as to how everything's going to go, because they have to be on the same page, and they both have to know that whatever God has planned for them is it, period. Doesn't matter your location, your time, your preference of color or food. It is gonna happen. That baby's in there. That baby's coming out. And we really got with it for Ja's birth, but not as much as we thought, because we still had the midwife just in case. Fingers crossed. You never know. No, you don't. You don't know. You could be in a hospital and still have something tragic happen, and the doctors be incapable of helping, or even make it worse. There is a lot of malpractice, and it's not to boo-boo on the doctors or anything, but it is the system that sees people as materialistic, mechanistic little robot people. And it's like, we're
products.
not. Yeah, products. Like I started studying nursing before I switched to micromolecular biology. Whenever I was in high school, I was able to be a part of a program called AHEC, Area Health Education Center, and I got to go to a hospital and job shadow. And I job shadowed in in emergency surgery. And I'm 15, 16 years old, watching someone get a hip replacement, seeing someone get cataract surgery. And it was amazing, the conversations that the doctors and the nurses were having about not what the heck they were doing. And then it struck me at how like rote and just run of the mill it was. Well, I'm just at work, I'm just tinkering on a thigh here. It's like, dude, that's someone's grandma. You're replacing someone's fractured femur right there, doing a hip replacement, and you're just having the most
mundane discussion,
most mundane based discussions. And that's how it is in birthing too. Like, especially with C-sections, and my wife would speak about it in much greater detail and with more eloquence, but they basically prep a woman from the second she comes to the hospital. They're starting to prep her for getting a C-section. If you are not progressing fast enough, don't worry, we'll get you down there. We'll get that baby out. It's trying to rush what God already has set forth. And it's a crazy, crazy system. And so we saw with our midwife, she said that if Elise didn't progress fast enough in X amount of hours, that she'd have to stop being her midwife, which basically meant I'm going to have to leave, or we're going to the hospital. Like, you're going to have to go to the hospital, or I have to stop giving you care, because if you go past a certain number of hours, then something's wrong, and it's mandated by the licensure of the state that she can't give care past then, and she has to recommend going to the hospital. But anytime you can tell anyone for any reason, F you, I'm going to do it this way because I have sovereign free will. Yeah. And so she was like, if you go that route, then I just have to leave, and I can't just be here as your friend or a bystander in case something goes bad. Nothing happened except that she did labor for a very, very long time. And she gave birth to Joffrey. But the only thing that the midwife really did was provide a sense of security. She didn't really, she had no role except that it was Elise's a first-time mother, and she needed someone to give her what her mom didn't, which was the ability to find the strength in herself to, hey, you feel that wall of pain that you're pushing up against? That's what you got to go through. You have to go through that, and on the other side is your baby. And so just push through that. And she got the metaphor. She knew, and she initiated herself into womanhood, into motherhood, through pushing through that semi-permeable layer of BS that we call pain. And it's just, it's a frictional point that we get to work with for our own self-development. And so after she went beyond the veil and came back with our son, she was like, cool, I'd do it again, but not like this. And for Emmanuel's birth, the whole time we kind of had to like mislead her family, because they thought, great, everything's awesome. Now, next time you're just going to go to the hospital, right? And we're like, Here we are at next time. And they're like, so you at least have a midwife, right? And we're like, we're getting him checked up. Everything's okay. Not lying, but understanding intuitively, like, we were checking up. She's doing palpations on her stomach, and she's trying to feel where the baby is and everything. But no, we didn't have a midwife. We didn't have any sort of medicalization. We didn't go get any ultrasounds. We didn't have anything done. No blood tests, nothing.
Awesome.
And because she didn't want to be treated like she was broken, like there was something wrong, that she needed to be poked and prodded and studied, like she's some sample or something. Yeah. And so his birth was wonderful, and it was much shorter. Like her labor was much shorter and was easier on her. I mean, most of the time we were just cracking jokes, and whenever it came time to like really get into the nitty gritty, it was like 3 hours of just nitty gritty, and then boom. And then I cleaned up afterwards. And one thing that we said for our next child that we would love to welcome into the world is that we would like to have someone on hand to clean up afterwards, so we can all go cuddle instead. Because I spent like a few hours cleaning up, but it's so worth it. You have to find the confidence in yourself to do these things. And I really do want to encourage men to educate themselves. There's a great book called Spiritual Midwifery by Ina May Gaskin, and she and her husband, his name's Stephen, they set up a place. I can't remember the name of the place, but they set up a place in Tennessee where they were allowing women to come and give natural birth there. And it was still kind of medicalized in the sense of what Elise and I now are really vibing with and understand. But it's a great way for you to understand the risks involved. But like, you also have to understand at the end of it all, you risked it all. You're already here. You're in. Coach put you in. You're gonna die. The whole thing is gonna go away. So go for it. Run into it, man. Like anyone that tries to shrink away or slink away from the responsibility of being here is not going to bear the full weight of responsibility and the full weight of the reward of that responsibility. And I think that that's something that I never was told as a young man or as a boy, and that I do not see any men speaking about. And so it's very important that men be present for their wives in that capacity, to be able to give them, again, like we started off talking about light and dark, to give them that strength, that safety, that security to be receptive, because she has to be receiving your child from God. Whatever that needs to mean for anyone, it's transcendent. It's transcendent, and language does not begin to touch it. But you have to be able to arrange your life and arrange your mind in such a way that you're capable of providing that structure for receptivity for your wife.
Yeah, I think that's perfect, because it really does work on your belief. That's why I don't really have a problem with the system, because some people need that system because they're not at the level of belief. They're in fear. So they have to have a way provided. And there's all these liabilities and everything. If something happens or there's a tragedy, and then everybody wants to sue somebody because they want to blame somebody else. So that's all I see with the system. It's just checks and balances if that's the way you want to go. But I feel like what you're saying is absolutely on point. If you have no fear and you understand what this experience really is, and that we've been birthing children for, I don't know how many thousands or whatever years we've been doing this, and we hadn't had hospitals in the past or all these things. And it's not like I give anybody a hard time that wants to go to a hospital or have a midwife or whatever, but I feel like it really is at your level of belief, and you have to really believe it. So I feel like you guys did have to go through the first time. It was kind of like training wheels, and now you're just like, oh yeah, we could do this, but you both are fully on board with it, which is amazing. And it makes it, makes you guys able to do it. But I just think some people lack that faith, and it just goes back to what we were saying about society. And it really all it's from inside, really.
Yeah, because my wife was born in a hospital. I was born in a hospital. We're products of that already. But whenever you wake up, you can't unsee what you've seen. Like whenever you see a woman medically raped, you're done with it. You're like, no, whatever people think is going on inside of a hospital it's not House. It's not Grey's Anatomy. That is not, people have been fed a fiction, and they think that these places are places of refuge. And so it excuses an ill living life. You can live your life in dis-ease because, well, the hospital system's there. And that's why I said there is no security net. There's no security net for a life filled with sin and dis-ease and diseasing actions. And so that's just the truth. As harsh as it is for anyone, that's just what it is. And you were saying you ended up becoming a stand-up comic. At some point you have to have such a flimsy veil of ego left just to be like, I'm definitely Brandon. I'm not, being someone else. Yeah, but you have to shed your ego to where no one can really hit what you are truthfully. That way you can go up there and you can see people truthfully. You can see things in the world truthfully and frame them, and not have yourself be so much the character. But you're like, I'm trying to talk about a broader concept. I'm not trying to make it the Brandon show, but I am the vessel to make you laugh. I'm going to try to keep it humorous. And that's one thing that I've been gaining personally and sharing with people is self-esteem. Esteem yourself above all others. That doesn't mean that you have to be above others. It just means you do it for yourself first. You don't go worship someone else. You don't worship yourself, but you have self-esteem. That means that your opinion of yourself is the highest opinion that anyone could have. And if you're like, in your mind, if you're in mental disease, then you're going to be beating up on yourself, and you're going to either be having conversations with people that aren't there because you're so hung up on a particular area of tension in your life or in a relationship with someone, or you're going to be talking to yourself. And even if you are casting a character of someone else that you're talking to, it's still yourself. No matter what you say inside your mind, if you think that you're pointing it at someone else, it's yourself. Who are you talking to? You think that you're talking to someone that said an offhanded remark to you, and you're just like really getting them with that one-liner before the door closes? No, you're just talking to yourself. And a lot of people have an inability to recognize that they denigrate themselves so much by trying to negatively impose in someone else's mind. It's like, dude, all you're doing is casting shadows in your own mind.
Yeah. Brandon has this thing that he talks about. We've talked about stuff like that before, but most recently, he talked about, like, if you are saying those thoughts in your head, imagine that someone outside of you is saying them. Brandon, you tell it. You say it better.
Yeah. So whenever you're beating yourself up about something, right? Say you made a mistake and you just constantly beating yourself up about it. If you took that voice in your head and externalized it as a person that repeated it as many times as you do to yourself, people around you would think that person is crazy. So you're treating yourself like a crazy person. I got that from Duncan Trussell on the Joe Rogan Experience years ago. But it's something that always stuck with me because I thought it was hilarious, because it is so true, you know, the way that people can treat themselves and just beat themselves up. And I like what you said too, about even if you're saying something to somebody in the external, you're really just having a conversation with yourself. And that goes back to not taking things personally. I say that a lot of times to people. If someone's giving you a hard time or they're saying things, they're really just having a conversation with themselves in front of you, because they don't know the true you. They're not inside your brain. You're just a character in their movie at the end of the day, you know?
Have either of y'all seen the movie Waking Life?
I don't think so.
By Richard Linklater. It is a very funny movie from a particular perspective. It's kind of dark humor a little bit, but it's really this guy. It doesn't know whether he's awake or he's dreaming. And it's just a movie of one-liners. So it's very funny. Check it out if you get the chance. It's something that's worth watching, and kind of teases like lucid dreaming and asking the question, what is most real? Because if we're here with the highest, like, you've arrived, you're at the highest level of awareness that you could have, because you're aware of the physical, you're aware of the spiritual, unless you choose to forget. So, and this is a line from the movie, is don't remember, or better yet, do not forget. Because if you have to remember, then it means that you have to reattach, you have to put yourself back together. But instead, just don't forget, just don't detach yourself from yourself. Just keep yourself whole, and then all is kosher, all is holy. So funny. I was just thinking, like, I'm doing mudras and okay signs, like that probably subconsciously triggers like 1 out of 5,000 people or something.
That's right. Most
That's
of those people
hilarious.
aren't listening anymore. We always say we hide all our wisdom inside our boringness, because in the beginning of the show, people will be like, this is boring. And then they just turn it off. And then the ones that get it stick around. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
The slow start just ushers them out. And it's like, all right, now that they're gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Wink, wink, cough,
Right,
cough, hint, hint.
right.
That's hilarious. Something else you were talking about just made me think of that. Even all that, like the blaming other people and this hospital setup type of thing, it's just escapism for people who, want somewhere, they want a savior. They want the easy way, the quote, easy way out. And they've been lied to mostly because of fear, right? And so this fear of, like, you can't do this yourself, how dare you, makes people go, oh, really? Oh, gosh, I guess I need a savior. I guess I need a place to go. And what if, like, not relying on self and not relying on, like, nature and what nature already gave you. So there's this level of escapism that happens, and they just like, okay, well, somebody else can do it for me. I'm just going to go and run and escape to that. And then it'll just be all over and I'll be good. And everything's just fine after that.
Yeah. It's like you take your energy, your attention, and your responsibility, all of that is, it has an energetic component to it. You take all of that and you just plug it into someone else's battery instead of plugging it back in and being like, okay, so all right, you told me that I can't do it, but I don't believe you. I believe that you can't do it because you just told me that you can't.
Yeah.
But I have a high self-esteem. I have a very strong belief that I can do it.
Yes.
Because I've been doing stuff that I had no idea how to do. And the way was provided so long as I did the work. And so I'm going to keep going with that because it keeps working. And I don't have to explain it. I don't have to philosophize it. Defend it. Nothing. The truth stands as it is, bare, and I don't have to clothe it with anything else.
Exactly.
And, you know, it ultimately allows people to continue that victim ideology. And it is an ideology. People have started to take it on as a framework of belief, and then they mirror it for other people to step into that same role. And it's up to everyone to step away from that role and say, I'm not going to fit into that box. My esteem for myself is too large for that box. And that's a huge task to say that everyone should do it. And so maybe I'll walk that back and just say the people that are being called to do it, it's very important for them to do that, because the more examples, the more points of resonance, then the further that signal, that message is able to spread and is able to impact people's lives and hearts and communities.
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%. I feel like the people that are going through the negative experiences, their consciousness needs to go through that to grow, to learn, to get to a different, higher state of consciousness, maybe in the next life, maybe in 2 lives from now, maybe, who knows when, but I feel like that's what's going on. That's why I don't really try to disparage people. It's fun to pick on them, and stuff like that, but I just consider myself lucky. Yeah, exactly. That's why I just use jokes and use humor, because that can also kind of wake people up in a way to some truth, is just the humor. And yeah, I see what you're saying, because I just think we're, not to be like full of ourselves or whatever, but we're just at a different level of understanding and consciousness. And maybe whatever it is that we went through, either in this life or if there's previous lives, who knows, whatever it was, got us to where we are now. So we're able to see, and I think it's happening more rapidly, though. People are kind of starting to wake up to this stuff. So I'm just happy that's the case. We get to be in this nice niche area where we're seeing things and we're getting it, and we don't have to freak out and be part of the system if we don't want to. We could choose, because like you said, you're just looking for a way. You just had faith. You had no fear, and you just did it. And the universe, whatever it is, God, whatever you want to say, provided a way for you, Yeah.
And again, like I said, I had to do the work, and that's so the chapter, the book of James in the Bible is basically faith with works. Like that, it could be summed up as you still have to do work. Even though you have such faith, you still have to do work. I really identified with the archetype of Thomas the Doubter for a very long time, because Thomas was the first person to touch the resurrected body of Christ. And Jesus was like, you don't believe me, huh? Well, how about that? Like, you want to hold my hand? Like, is that real enough for you? And at some point, whenever I was eating a lot of psychedelic mushrooms, I asked to feel the hand of God. And it wasn't like some pivotal thing. It was more like watching a butterfly. It was more like feeling the wind on your face. It wasn't retribution. It wasn't, can you truly look at the things that you've done with your life? I've had those sorts of trips, and that's not the voice of God. That's your own judgment, your own judging mind judgment. And, we're already at the throne of judgment for ourselves whenever we choose to wear the crown of thorns, and we choose to suffer, and we choose to judge and be in that intellectual, this, not that, not this role. If you want to be in the good, that's good, that's bad, that's good, that's bad, then you're right back at the chariot that has both. You're seeing light and dark, and you're going, that's light, that's dark, that's light, that's dark, good, not good. You, at some point, you have to have the whole landscape that sees them both. That sees that they couldn't exist without one another, but that you are also antecedent or precedent before that, and that you're carried along by it, and you're just a witness. So you don't have to discern that that's good, that's bad, that's good, that's bad. It already is the way it is, and it's just coming into your field. One thing that I've been trying to better define as a concept is people negatively affirming things. So trying to affirm something from a negative point of view first. And so that they'll start off with denying something or speaking about it with negative tones, but in a way that they're trying to make it manifest. And it's like, wait, why are you going to speak about it that way? Because it's always like going around your elbow to get to your thumb. It's like you want something good to happen, but you're saying like, oh, that's not going to happen unless X, Y, Z. And so it's something that I viewed a lot growing up in my home, was negatively affirming things that it distances you away from what you're actually trying to focus on. And so and I got away from the whole new age woo-woo positive affirmation stuff pretty much as soon as it came into my sphere. I was like, well, that's kind of bullcrap. Like, these people seem like they're sniffing their own farts. Like, you don't really get it. Like, you have to work. Like, I came from a family where you had to work. Even though I was homeschooled, I went with my mom to work. She was a secretary at a fire department, and we went with her there. But whenever I was done with my schoolwork, my dad would come pick me up and we would go work a side job. So I was like 8 years old going to do drywall or going to cut grass or something. And it's funny because I was only ever like labor support even until I was like 18. I didn't know how to wire a light switch until I wired the light switch. I was a gopher. Go for the wrench, go get this, go get that. So not really ever solving problems, but having to be part of getting work done. And so I encourage men, especially, to empower yourself through skills, because it's something that once you know how to do it, they can't take it away from you. Like, no one can take it away from you. You know how to do it now. So I try to give people skills as much as possible, whether it's the skills to heal themselves by, maybe they need knowledge about herbs. Maybe they need knowledge about why you don't eat unfermented grains or grains that haven't been soaked. Why I don't eat beans. I don't eat legumes at all. Unless, and this is a very, very, very specific unless, they've been soaked, sprouted, and then fermented. That's it. And it's such a tedious process that I'd rather just not include it. I feel like people, we don't have enough guts for it. We can't ferment all of that stuff to make a good energy source out of it. It's better left for fodder for animals. It's famine food. Like, we see that there is an abundance of food. You can go to the store, but that is an illusion too. Like, the reason why people don't grow gardens, don't participate in animal husbandry, is because they feel secure in the food system. It's an insecure place. We don't even have grain reserves in the United States. It's already been sold for cash, and then next year's crop is already sold on the market as futures. So people don't understand this, and all it takes is a couple hiccups to happen for there to be not enough food for human consumption, because a lot of the grains and beans and stuff that are produced are for industry or to feed animals. And so it's important for us to not look at the medical system, the food system, the political system as any sort of savior. It's not going to save you. It's not going to save you. It's better to start participating in your garden, in your family, and in your own health before trying to go look for anyone else to do it. Because what's offered in the stores for food is foodstuffs. It's not even food. It's stuff made out of food. It is a food byproduct. It is not food. Food is a whole thing that whenever you look at it, you're like, wow, I can see where that came from. That is an apple. I'm not going to knock applesauce, but they can fill applesauce with high fructose corn syrup and potassium sorbate. And I'm not going to get too deep on potassium sorbate.
And yellow number 5.
Yellow, yeah, you start putting dyes in it. It's like, wait, what? Yeah, that way it looks yellow for the kids. The kids really like the yellow. It just becomes ridiculous. And that's the thing, is that we're in an artificially created matrix that we can't really see how deep it is. But the stuff that is at the store is end of the line. You're in a famine. You don't realize it. You don't realize it because you have a full belly. This goes back to what I started out with, which is because you have a full belly, you think that you're being fed, but there's no minerals. Calories help to provide you the energy to do work with the minerals. But if you don't have the minerals in your body, then you're already deficient. You're going to be at ill health. You're not going to have the juice. You don't have the charge. You don't have the chi. And this is why throughout history, we have partnered with herbs and fungi and different plants and animals so that we can get those minerals. We make teas for the minerals, not just the large macromolecule compounds that, oh, this is a great antioxidant. Yeah, but the antioxidant is also made up of all of these smaller components that have minerals in them. And that's what we're looking for from the earth, is to give us those minerals because they carry a charge. We're electrical beings. We need the energy from the sun that has been unlocked through the soil to come into ourselves to inform ourselves. So we're taking the sunlight, the light of the Son of God, to inform ourselves. So we're taking it as information, as data, and then we are unfolding our life story, which is in our DNA, with the sun. And it's super profound to continue to meditate on how deeply that is, that is true, that we are informing ourselves to unfold our life story so that we can, through epigenetics, rewrite our life story. So that's the getting out of familial trauma, is that you're rewriting your life story. Your life story starts now. It doesn't start when you were born. You can look at it retrospectively all you want, and you will wade through all of your traumas, or you can look at it from the present moment and you can take the responsibility and the sovereignty to start writing your story now. The best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. The second best time is now. If you're going to do something that takes a long process, it's better to go ahead and get started. It's a long process for us to heal ourselves. And so whenever I started looking at making products to heal myself, I wasn't physically ill. That wasn't it. I was mentally disconnected from the matrix. I started to find myself mentally disconnected from that. And I was kind of like in this, I felt like I was in the womb, about to be reborn, but I didn't know what I was going to be reborn into. I hardly remembered what I had just left was Babylon. And so I started to find myself in this new era where I had to take the utmost responsibility for how I was going to rebuild myself, what I was going to inform myself with and become through what I eat, through what I read, through what I listen to, through who I speak with, through who I will not have in my life anymore. All of these things, correcting them and balancing them so that I can see more clearly. And I'm not having to tell myself lies to be comfortable with going to sleep at night.
Yeah, that's really awesome stuff. Brandon, do you have any comments? Because I would like to talk about more stuff.
Well, other than you should have your own show, but Sharon hates when I say that. She comes from a lack of, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, that's great information. You should definitely be spreading that message.
Own show?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But no, go ahead, Sharon. What were you going to say?
Who are you accusing of wanting to have their own show? What are you talking about?
No, no, I was just saying you should have your own show, but I remember one time Sharon
Me?
and I had a conversation. No, no, James should have his own show, I'm
Oh,
saying.
okay. Yeah, he should.
It's great. Great
Yeah.
idea.
Yes. So I kind of want to go back to the topic of the um placenta stuff. And I have a question, but I would like you to also lead into what you talked about at the beginning, that you said that Gabriel and Chance were talking about, and I haven't watched anything from them talking about that, so I'm curious. But my question is, did you guys do a lotus birth like James and Najla did? And how would that, and if yes or no, whatever, how is that different than encapsulating the placenta? And does baby still receive the benefit either way, whether he stayed with his placenta until it fell off him, or his mom decided to encapsulate and he received that through his mother's milk?
Yeah, so I'm not really familiar with the terminology of a lotus birth. Like I did broad strokes with most of the natural birthing stuff to allow Elise to feel safe. If the lotus birth is that where they like preserve the placenta in herbs and salts and stuff and then allow it to fall off?
No, I believe, and so James and Najla from Grounded Extracts were on Crow as well. And Najla spoke about that in the second hour, right, Brandon?
Yeah, I
I
believe
believe it
so.
was second hour for when they were on the show. And I believe that was that the first or second time they were on?
I think it was the second
I think it
time.
was the second time they were on as well. So it's funny because like you guys were on the second time as well, and you guys talked about the natural birth, and they did the same thing.
Yeah, and so we let the placenta become pale. So we really don't know how long we left it attached, and then
but as in minutes, hours?
Oh, probably hours. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Very
I think
long time.
they did days. I think it was until the placenta actually just fell off. I don't even know,
Yeah.
like the cord fell off on its own. So the baby basically had taken all the nourishment from the placenta. And so I don't know the details of what happened afterward, but I think it'd be cool if you and James and Najla and Elise.
Oh, that'd be a great conversation.
That
Yeah.
would be a fantastic conversation. I thought you guys maybe had already talked.
We've been crossing paths and bumping and talking, but we haven't like set anything up yet. But we've also been discussing having a conversation. So for Elise, Emmanuel's right prior to Emmanuel's birth, we all got sick and had ear infections. Joffrey and I, our oldest, we were both able to just kind of kick it. We were doing some lymphatic movements and just kind of working it out. Elise was not able to kick it. And we actually went to a walk-in clinic just to get an idea, just someone with the tools. We didn't have the tool. I just wanted to look in her ear and be able to see, like, is there a lot of inflammation? And the LPN, she said, you just have a mild ear infection. I can't really give you anything because you're pregnant. And this was like 5 days or so before she gave birth. I can't really give you anything because you're pregnant, and it would pass through to the baby. You should see a specialist after you give birth. She gave birth, and about 2 days later, her face was completely paralyzed on the left side. And the infection had apparently gotten behind her eardrum and was affecting the nerves that control the muscles of her face. Oh, no. And she, and so we called an ENT, and were able to schedule an appointment. We went in, he put her on broad spectrum antibiotics and steroids and drained her ear and put a tube in her ear. And it cleared up, and her face was still paralyzed. And we gave her a buttload of lion's mane. So lion's mane mushroom is a potent NGF stimulator. So NGF is nerve growth factor. Lion's mane is an adaptogenic mushroom in the way that it can stimulate the endogenous production of NGF, which your body does if you have like acute trauma to your nervous system. So this mushroom is a great ally for stimulating your nervous system to go in and start finding where it needs to make repairs. I mean, like, we don't think about it, but if you bump and bruise yourself up pretty regularly, like, you're actually doing small amounts of trauma to your body, which it totally is capable of handling. But if you're able to support it with herbs and different things like that, it's a good idea too. And so we keep things like that on rotation. But the doctor, the ENT, told her that she probably wasn't going to have feeling in her face for like 3 months to maybe 6 months, and that she should expect to not have like her face fully functional and for about 9 months to a year or so. And she was good in like 2 weeks. Like, fantastic. Yeah, had extremely marked improvement in her 1 week checkup. He was like, what? Like, that's really crazy. And then at her 1 month, he was like, oh, whoa, what are you doing? Like, you're pretty much back to normal. And she had a couple spots that still felt deadened, but it was so strange because, like, I'm not against the medical system. I'm not against a whole lot of things, because being a staunch opponent of something will also manifest your opposition. And that's just that's a principle of being here, is like, you don't have to be against things, but definitely be for something. So and there are some things that obviously you should be against, so that you have a boundary. You have that condition that, hey, that's evil. Like, that we're not going to mince words like that. The definition of that would be evil. And so I don't feel that way about the medical system overall, but I feel that 95% of it is just like a cattle chute. And so going in for acute illnesses and acute trauma is one of the best things that our Western medical system is capable of handling. And we both have discussed whether that was the best course of action, and whatever, like, it's not anything that we can do about it now, except
because it happened.
Obviously, exactly. You know? And obviously it was. And so, because we were trying, like, rubbing DMSO all on the back of her ear and back here, and trying to do different oil, essential oil mixes as ear drops with like Wally's ear oil and all this stuff. And none of it was working. So, you know, there's a time and a place for most everything. Yeah. And so she was not able to breastfeed Emmanuel her colostrum. She actually had to pump and dump all of that. And it was a very heartbreaking thing for her, because she felt like that was at least her duty, was to be able to provide him that nourishment. And she was able to shoulder that responsibility wonderfully. And that was part of the reason why we did things specifically the way that we did with the placenta. And so we froze it, and she actually sliced it and dehydrated it and has taken capsules. But there's this weird phenomena that she's discussed with me about women taking or consuming the placenta and feeling anger and restlessness, irritability. And and she would be a wonderful person for you to speak with as well, because she's got tons of information about that I haven't dove deep enough into. But it's not uncommon for women to consume the placenta and then start to have these emotions. And I don't know if it's in the DNA that's in the placenta, because it's half me, half her, and you know, all Emmanuel. Yeah. And so whatever revelations are coming through us to inform, I'm not sure. And the things that Chance and Gabriel are touching on is that just as a thought experiment, to imagine a society or a portion of society that has never broken the tradition of placentophagy, of consuming the placenta. And if in so doing, they have tapped into like the Akash or the eternal memory banks, basically, and they're able to perceive other than we can, or more than we can, or something. They have a different type of awareness that we are not considering is a possibility, because we don't even know. It's like if you were a two-dimensional character on a two-dimensional plane and a three-dimensional character came into your world, you'd have no idea, because you don't know what up is. So you would never know that you are being observed. So how would you even know about a possibility unless someone told you about the possibility? And this kind of gets into like spiritual teachers and spiritual leaders. Like, how do you know the possibility that God exists or that there is an afterlife, except that somebody told you that there is a possibility? And so the possibility that you can consume the placenta and pass on information to your children that radically puts them ahead of others, maybe in psychic abilities, perhaps in linguistic capabilities, perhaps in just spiritual recognition. Like they may just know things without having to have it explained, because their intuition hasn't been cut off from them. I don't know. It's an area of exploration, and that's one thing that they're kind of getting into, is that there may be sections of society or maybe a society that hasn't broken that tradition of eating the placenta. And one thing Elisa and I were discussing is that placentophagy wasn't what we think of it as now, as like, oh yeah, you're going to dehydrate it and make placenta smoothies and capsules and stuff. No, they probably like cooked it up and made it like a pie. It's got like placenta is apparently the cake. So they probably cooked it up, made a cake, and then I'm thinking everybody in the family had a piece of the pie. And so everybody got informed with who is coming, who is showing up. Emmanuel, God with us, like showing up real time. And so I'm not sure of it, but I think that it has some really potent implications for people to consider doing so. I know a lot of people are turned off to the visceral things. I try to tell people to roll their feet out. They're like, I don't want to roll my feet out with a ball. That hurts. And I'm like, it's too visceral for you. And so maybe telling people to chop up a placenta that your wife just gave birth to might sound a little too visceral. But there's something there. There's a reason why it was a tradition. There's a reason why we observe it in nature. And for whatever reason, we've closed the door and said that that's wholly reserved for nature. Animals do that. We're over here. We're above eating the placenta. And then you can get into the rabbit hole about the legalistic implications of the of possibly, allegedly, hospitals sending samples or the entire placenta to the Vatican. I don't know. I've read some stuff that's pretty out there that suggests that DNA is kept on file, and that kind of weirded me out before we had kids. So I was like, yeah, we're not gonna get our kids a birth certificate or a social security card. So neither of our kids are
in the system.
Yeah, they're not surfing the waters of
maritime. Yeah,
they're on the land.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What if somebody at the Vatican's eating all these placenta samples? You know, like it's a way to connect with people on a certain wavelength. You know, I don't know, man. There could be some crazy stuff going on,
dude. Like the oracles in ancient Greece, they're just like sitting over like these tubes that were like volcanic tubes, and they're getting high off the gases or something. Maybe it's something like that, but it's like I don't know what would it be called whenever you're like manifesting someone's spirit, but like they're alive, because it's like necromancy if you're trying to like bring them back from the dead. But yeah, I don't know. Like maybe they're able to channel a particular being's essence. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I know this much
Cloning
is
of the
that
spirit.
yeah, I know this much is that people that are highly invested in the material world and they think that that's it, let them. I don't need to convince anyone. I understand that there are things that I don't know, that I can't understand, but I also know that the materialistic explanation of things is hollow and doesn't provide what the soul is actually looking for. And people know that there's magic without even knowing. They see Harry Potter and it inspires them, but they don't know why they're inspired. It's because you're already getting a spell cast on you just to watch the movie anyways and engage in the magic of cinema. But for whatever reason, we think that that's it because, once the movie's over and everyone goes back to real life. That was just a movie. And it's like, okay, dude, well, thank God everyone can't just like cast spells to levitate an object across the room, because imagine the level of immaturity that people are at. It would be used for ill so often. So yes. Thank God people can't do that. But the things that we can do is that we can manifest an entire landscape inside of our mind. And we just say, that's imagination. Great, dude. Well, Imagination Land has also convinced people things exist that don't exist, and things that don't exist do exist. Like, it's funny because we're and that's why I said it's like with intellect. I used to be wholly invested in trying to gain knowledge, and now I'm just like, I'll let it wash over me. If I find something inspiring, I'll go down the rabbit hole. But I'm not trying to like one up anyone anymore. I'm not trying to like prove my point. If I don't know, I don't know, and I'll let it come to me if it has to. But I found the limit of intellect, like through my searching, through using mushrooms as an ally for self-discovery. I found the limit of intellect, and I wasn't impressed, honestly. I was like, okay, I get it. Like I'll go do something worthwhile instead of trying to be such a special boy.
That's awesome. Something you mentioned that I want to know more about, just because you probably know the answer, but you said observing this in nature, which is about eating the placenta, and that animals do this. Can you give me an example of, like, if you've seen it or if you just know the process of, like, give me an animal or some animals that do it and how it's done, like how many days pass before they actually do that? I mean, does that animal have an umbilical cord also attached to this placenta, or how does that all work?
Yeah, generally the mother consumes the placenta within minutes. It's very important for animals to leave no trace and keep going. Like they can't stay somewhere that they just gave birth, because their baby is a meal. And so they have to keep moving, and the mother needs to recoup some of that energy from birthing. And that comes through eating the placenta and the afterbirth, cleaning them. All of that also forms a relationship for the animal, for the baby, with mother through the cleaning process and everything. They're both nourishing one another like that. But generally, the baby comes out and the placenta will be birthed maybe 40 minutes later, and the umbilical cord is typically like, I think they just chew it off, and then they'll have a little bit on their belly for a week to 2 weeks or so, and it'll just fall off. But nature does not spare any sort of time to allow it to like finish pumping all the blood out or anything. They're like, oh crap, now we got to keep going. And the placenta is seen as a very vital source of nutrition. There's also something weird. I think whenever we were talking to Crow, he was talking about this particular fascia that is birthed, this particular tissue that's birthed that encapsulates the placenta, that is a very valuable thing to sorcerer magician types. I don't know. But go back, if you have the chance, go back and check that episode, because he mentioned that, and I was like, that's really crazy. And I wasn't talking on that part. I was just listening in while Elise was speaking with him, and I was like really blown away, because there's so much about birth and death that just gets hidden, and you're told that this is the way that it goes. Like Elise in that episode, she was speaking about natural birth and the processes with our son in the first hour. And then towards the end of the first hour, I kind of jumped in to talk about the legalistic aspects of things, because we started to talk about how they didn't have a birth certificate. So what did we do instead? Instead, we made the documents. We didn't ask someone to give us a form to fill out, because then we're consenting that our children need to be in their system because we used their form. Instead, we created it ourselves. We're creators. And people don't give themselves credit for it. I created the document. I went up to a notary with our midwife and my wife. We all signed it as witnesses, had it notarized. Good enough. We can go file it with our parish, which is the equivalent of a county. Louisiana just still has parishes. We can go file it with the parish just to put it on record. But the fact that a notary already notarized it is acceptance in commercial law. That's acceptance. That person already gave, that's notice. Notice to principal is notice
to agent.
To agent, and notice to agent is notice to principal. And just in that interaction of her looking over it and going, and you're who you say you are, and you're who you say you are, and you're who you say you are, and these are the events as they're recorded, stamp, that forms the record. I can go put that into a court case if need be, for whatever particular reason I would need that. But it's a foundational document for identity. If my son chooses to participate in commerce, if he chooses to participate in commerce, he can take that. He'll have to jump through some hoops, but guess what? He can get a taxpayer identification number, a TIN. It's not that hard. And the thing that people are worried about is like, well, what are they gonna? How are they gonna get a social security number? I don't want them to have it. I want them to operate a trust from the private.
Yeah.
I don't want them to be doing Babylonian commerce. I would rather them be productive agents of their own, of the highest will, without having to participate in that system. And they may have to have a vehicle to do so, meaning that they may have to have a bank account, and that's fine. I will teach them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the whole thing, is that people have gotten so inculcated with the victim complex that they are looking for someone else to just make it easier for them. Like I said, he might have to jump through hoops. Good. That's your tests. Those are your lessons. It's making you worthy. A lot of people don't want to be worthy of anything more than time to go sit and rot away still, and not have to be responsible. And it's sorrowful to see that, because I look at our people, and this is what I see is our people are sick. Whenever I'm making tinctures, I tell Ja was like 1.5 years, and he was like, what are you doing? Whenever we were bottling tinctures once, and I said, we're making medicine for the people. Like, that's all that we're doing here, is we're just making medicine for the people. The ones that need it are the ones that are going to use it.
Absolutely. You had mentioned that some of these animals do it. Can you tell us what kind of animal? Like, give me an example of some animals that do this, because we have, like, for example, cows, and like, do they eat it? Like, they're not carnivore. See, and then people say, oh, they're herbivores, but they ate their own placenta. So how does that, right?
Again, this is the issue with like trying to intellectualize things,
Right?
is that the definitions fall short of what nature is.
Exactly.
Like the mind cannot ascertain, cannot apprehend, and to apprehend is to like be able to grab it. The mind cannot apprehend what nature is. It can observe and participate, but the mind does not get to subvert the creation, does not get to subvert God. And that's like one of the powerful things about learning Hermetic principles, is that you still have to be under the one that made the principles be at all. And so you can't, just because you know the rules to the game, kid, doesn't mean that you get to make the game, kid.
Yeah, 100%. And I love how you said you created those documents, because it's like people think it's a pain in the ass, but you already created the person. It's like that was the hard part. Creating the documents is the easy part.
Yeah, man. And raising your children every day, that's hard. That's good. And that's the good work right there. If you want to change the world, go home to your family. Like, you don't have to go around Greenpeacing people and Greenpeace, I'm a pepper spray. You don't have to go around protesting. Again, you don't have to fight against things that you disagree with. You just have to fight for what you do agree with. Like, you fight for your family. How do you do that? Do you do that by being a samurai warrior? No. Be a warrior in your garden. It's way better to be someone that has productive capability than someone that's trying to negatively affirm or tear down other people or tear down the system. Dude, you don't even know how to spin a magnet. Like, what are you talking? You don't know how to spin a magnet around copper to generate an electromagnetic field. What are you doing? What are you really like plugging your cell phone in to bitch about things, but you don't even know how to wire the outlet that you plug it into. And this is where I got with my understanding of myself and humbling myself, was I'm a freaking baby. Like, Owen had mentioned this in a live stream probably 8 months ago or so. He was like talking about how mentally and his capability is that he's probably like a 14, 15-year-old, but like he's stuck in like a 40-plus-year-old man's body, because he's, in this place, like, why the fuck don't I have any skills? Like, now I'm having to learn skills. I'm having to learn how to farm, but everyone knew how to farm like 200 years ago. It was not knowing how to farm was foreign. And so I feel like I'm like a 12, 13-year-old just trying to just pulling up to learn a little bit more today.
Yeah. And I think what you said is really important. And you said it earlier about this negative affirmation, because excuse me, I've heard it put like this, where it's like the universe doesn't understand not or no. So if you're either thinking about something negative happening, or you're talking about it, or kind of like fighting against it, the universe might just give it to you, because it seems like that's what you want, because that's what you're focusing on so much. Like, I use the example of my cats, because I let them outside. Like, if one's gone for a while, instead of picturing all the things that could have happened to my poor little kitty, I just think of my cat walking back home. I don't think about it getting hit by a car, or like attacked by a coyote, or all these things, because I think if you focus on that, you can actually, you can manifest that to happen. It's like the universe is like, all right, he wants his cat to be attacked by a coyote or whatever, like you thinking about it.
Go.
You're creating this mental picture, and it's the same thing with birth, all this stuff, yeah.
And exactly what you're saying. It's like you run a simulation in your mind whenever you're like, oh, I don't want this to happen. Well, first off, if you slow down long enough to see it, you paint the whole scenario, and then you say, but not this. And it's like, whoa, that's not how it works. Like, you just painted the whole scenario just to like obliterate it. Like, but you created it first in your mind, that it would be that way just so that you could deny its existence, but you gave it existence in your mind first.
Yeah.
And it's like, instead of doing that exhausting energetic that energetic leapfrog just to get back to a state of stillness, because that's, you went from stillness to forming a picture in your mind just to go back to nothing, no thing. So no thing held in your mind, but you wanted to create something to destroy it, is basically what it comes to. And it's like, that's where a lot of people's energies is like leaking. It's like they're leaking this energy by praying for things that they don't want, by having fear and anxiety of them possibly coming. And then most of the time it doesn't. Like sometimes I'll walk out that door to go to our tiny house to go to sleep, and I'm like, it'll just be late at night, like, 11 o'clock at night, and I'm like, oh, what if the boogeyman's out there? Like, dude, the boogeyman's not out there. Go to sleep. Like, you're just tired. Like, if you're starting to feel fear creep in, fear is adultery with God. You have no place for it in your mind. Only sow good seeds there. And so if you're starting to feel fear, be a ruthless warrior in your mind and kill fear. Get to fear first. There's like this, this Zen parable of this warlord going through the countryside, and he's just killing everyone and burning villages and monasteries, and he's looting the monasteries. And he comes up to this monastery, and there's a single monk there. And the general goes up to the monk and he goes, have you not heard of our coming? We've been going from village to village, monastery to monastery, sacking and pillaging everything. Why are you still here? Do you not know who I am? And he says, oh, I've heard of you. And I heard that you have been doing these things. And he looks at the monk and he said, I can run my sword through your belly and not blink an eye. Do you know who I am? And then the monk goes, do you know who I am? I could have you run your sword through my belly and not blink an eye. And that's where we're at. If you're there with birth and death, then you're here with life. And it's okay. If the boogeyman's waiting for me out there, well, God put him there right on time. I'll see God in a second, and I'll thank him for this wonderful life I lived. But it's probably not going to happen. I'm probably conjuring stuff just to make myself have a fear squirt real quick. Oh, there's a pump of cortisol before I go to bed. Oh, like, come on now. We've been too dramatized through Hollywood and through movies that we have lost a very intimate part of what it is to be here without those subconscious scripts of Jason coming at you, or Mike Myers just being right there. Oh, he got you. Like, no, you got yourself. Like, oh, you scared yourself.
Yeah, it's like more adrenaline addiction. We talked about that with Nick with Woodshop there, and 100%. And I love that parable that you shared. I've heard Ram Dass, I think, mention that on an audio series of lectures that he gives. I think it was about the Bhagavad Gita. It was in that one. But yeah, that's so true. Don't you know who I am? I can have your sword run right through me, not blink an eye. It's like, all right, dude, whatever.
It's like, well, if you're the one that's gonna kill me, then you're the one. Yeah. Right. Like, what am I gonna do about it, huh?
And if the boogeyman is outside, you might sell him some mushrooms. You never know.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, he's like, oh shit, you got oysters? Nice.
Yeah.
Maybe he's got some trauma that he needs to work on,
Shoot, dude, probably if he's the boogeyman, right? It's almost implicit.
True. Speaking of mushrooms, I do want to maybe end with this. I do have some questions about your products. And I saw that you sold, and I think they're the bags at the top, but they have ice in them or something like that. They're cold.
No, these up here. These are bags of mycelium. Those are all lion's mane up there. But it's just hardwood sawdust and the mushroom culture, and it's a little bit cool to the touch, but it's just the mushrooms growing in that bag. And so you cut an X and then spray it with water, and they'll fruit out of that. and then you just harvest it. And that's how we do our commercial production, is with these biodegradable bags from Unicorn Bags. They're out of El Paso or Plano, Texas. Anyways, they're in the US, so really, really great supplier, and our next door neighbors, basically.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so we sell grow your own kits. So that those are at home fruiting kits, so you can fruit mushrooms on your countertop. I'm actually in the process of getting someone to design a box for them. That way they can sit on a countertop and they'll look aesthetic, and it's not just a plastic bag full of sawdust and mushroom mycelium.
That's awesome. Well, maybe I was mixing it up with something else. I did see like you had these ice boxes, or like, and maybe there was ice in there and you had some of them inside there. Maybe was that like ice chests? Did you have ice chests with some of them inside?
No, it was just a tote. It was like a black tote with a yellow lid, and I just had those in there just to keep them out of the sun and to carry them. Okay. So I brought like 15 of them with me. I brought 15 5-pound blocks. So I brought 75 pounds of stuff, and I was like, I don't want to go back with 75 pounds of stuff. Please take these.
Yeah. So does anything? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Topher got some, and I think he made a mushroom totem with them. I kind of want to ask him to send me pictures of what he did and if they fruited for him, because he wanted to expand it. So you can take this. You don't just have to grow the mushrooms out of this bag. You could take this bag of sawdust and you can actually make it into a mushroom patch. Now with lion's mane, you'd want to do something a little bit differently than that. But with oyster mushrooms, they're really good. You can just put them in wood chips in your garden bed, or you could even just you could chop the block into like quarters and bury quarters of the block, and then they'll fruit out of your garden bed. And oyster mushrooms are nematodecidal, so they are. There's another word, is nematophagous, and so they eat nematodes in the soil. So it's really good to include in your gardens, especially if you're doing a lot of root vegetables or other or like fruit trees or something like that might be affected by nematodes.
Okay. So then what did I see in those bags that looked like they were pieces of ice?
They evaporate water through their metabolism. So their metabolism creates heat, which evaporates some of the water that's in the substrate, and then it goes on to it. But it looks like, they almost look like lightning in the bag as it's growing. It looks like lightning, or looks like ice forming. They're, like I said, they're kind of cool to the touch, but the center of that block is probably on average 5 degrees warmer than the air temperature or the surface temperature. And so just like us, whenever we eat and we metabolize things, we're producing exothermic, or we're releasing heat energy from our metabolism.
Awesome. I wanted to ask you also about the coffee, because I should have said this in the beginning, but I've got some of your coffee and I also got some of the lion's mane capsules. And what I've been doing is I also get coffee from the lovely Bear, Pelagic Bear, who's probably in the chat. He always pops in, and he just sends me the bean and I grind it up myself. And then I take like either a teaspoon or two of what you have and throw it in there, and then put it in a French press and let it sit for like 5-6 minutes. But yeah, I really love that coffee that you have. So what are some of the benefits in that, and like, how do you make that?
Yeah, so we just we buy in bulk green coffee. We only source organic coffee because coffee is one of the most highly sprayed agricultural commodities. And we buy it from a place in Mississippi called Coffee Bean Corral, and they're like a big importer, and they buy up lots seasonally. So it's not always the same one that we have. I'm not sure which one that you got whenever we roasted, but typically I look for something that's Central or South American. I really like the notes from coffees grown in those regions. I had one from Dominican Republic once. That was probably one of my favorites. And then there's one from Colombia that is like my absolute favorite. If they have it in stock, that's almost 100% what I get. It's such good stuff. And one of my best friends actually conceived his daughter's here today. Conceived her in Colombia, and she's a wonderful little jungle baby. I love her. And she's full of spunk and spirit. And so we get the coffee beans. We have a small coffee roaster. It only does a pound at a time. I don't know how, like, Rebel Joe and Paraplegic, I have no idea what their roaster setup is like, because that stuff gets expensive, man. Like, our coffee roaster was maybe $500, and I was like, ouch. I don't want to roast it in a air popcorn popper anymore. That's where I was at. I drink coffee every day. That's how I built all this. I need a little bit of coffee. And that's I don't, if you ever hear Topher talking about roasting his own coffee, that's what he was talking about doing. And I was just doing that with a chopstick and burning the crap out of my fingertips. And I was like, I'm done with this. I've been talking about getting this coffee roaster for like 3.5 years, and we finally got it. And so we roast about a pound at a time, and then we grind that with our lion's mane fruit body. And that's really it. We dehydrate the lion's mane and then grind that to a powder. And so that powder is included in there. And I think each tablespoon, you're getting about 750 milligrams of lion's mane. And so with most medicinal mushrooms, you're looking at an active threshold around 350 milligrams. Some a little bit less, some you want to take more, but 750 milligrams with a tablespoon of that coffee is a great amount for a cup of coffee. And it is a potent NGF stimulator, so it's great for repairing your nervous system. It can help with promoting mental clarity. It's great for diabetics or people with peripheral neuropathy or tingling and numbness in their extremities. We're not selling them to treat disease or cure disease or anything like that, but a lot of times people take it and they start to feel where it fits in with their lifestyle. And that's one of the biggest things. Like I say, people have a reduction in inflammation, and that's where they see such a marked improvement. And I recommend eating mushrooms because they are the great alchemical masters of the natural world. They convert huge trees back into the soil from which they arose from. They help to clean up landscapes and ecosystems. So if they're cleaning up the ecosystem out there, they'll do it in here too. So eat them. They're like a big sponge to just clean you out. And all mushrooms, including oyster mushrooms, have some sort of activity against cancerous cells. Not in the sense that they're like antagonistic and trying to fight them, but it's more like it's like, hey, remember who you are. You're you fighting yourself. Okay, goodbye.
That's awesome. And you sell, like you were talking about, you sell fruiting bodies as well. So tell us a little bit about the different fruiting bodies that you do sell. And then I know that you were saying before we got on the recording that reishi is one that you can't really eat once you've steeped it and made like a tea or something out of it. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we don't sell any fresh mushrooms online, just because trying to get them to someone and have them be in peak condition and edible condition, it just costs too much to do on an individual basis. Like the shipping would be like $20 minimum. And so, and you'd need to buy like a pound of mushrooms to make it worth it. So it's not feasible. But we do sell dehydrated fruit bodies, dehydrated mushrooms like oyster mushrooms, lion's mane, and reishi are the ones that we have right now available. And reishi is one that you use for making medicinal extracts and teas. It's not really an edible mushroom, but you can put it in like bone broth or chicken stock or something like that to increase the medicinal qualities of your food. But you don't really want to eat reishi. Reishi is like a very, it's a very quirky, pithy, woody mushroom. So it's not an edible mushroom, but you can grind it into powder, which we do have reishi mushroom powder. It's part of our remedy blend. So we have remedy powder, we have remedy tincture, and we have remedy capsules, which is the powder encapsulated. But you could make tea with your reishi, dehydrate it, and then grind it and either encapsulate it or consume it that way. But it's not an edible mushroom. It's not something that you'd want to eat because you're not going to want to chew on. It's basically like chewing on a stick. And I mean, that's fine. That's fine. If people like chewing on sticks.
You can eat after you've steeped them as a tea.
Yeah. So if you made a tea with lion's mane, you could eat the lion's mane. I would just recommend taking your lion's mane. Lion's mane is a delicious edible mushroom. So it's got an almost neutral flavor. So that's why we put it in the pancakes. That's why we put it in the coffee. It's not going to change the taste of anything. If anything, it kind of can make it a little bit nutty, almost kind of like a pine nut, sort of. Like it's not like a super strong nut flavor or anything like that, but it's really mild, almost neutral. And if you had like dehydrated lion's mane fruit bodies, I would just recommend rehydrating that in a broth and sautéing it or putting it into like a crock pot meal. Like crock pot meals are the easiest way to go because you can get all of your ingredients prepped, toss it in a crock pot, and you can break up your dehydrated mushrooms and let them rehydrate and cook with your meal. And it all comes together in 4 to 6 hours or however long your crock pot meal is going to take. And that's a super straight. What's that?
Or the Instant Pot.
Or the Instant Pot, yes. And people ask me, well, what about heating the mushrooms? Is it going to mess them up? And no, you actually need to cook all of your mushrooms. People are like, I eat button mushrooms on my salads just fine. I'm like, that's great, but you should cook all of your mushrooms. I understand that culturally it's accepted to eat raw mushrooms. And if you want to, great. I'm not coming to slap it out your hand. But most people don't tolerate raw mushrooms very well. And it should be cooked to break down some of the complex carbs that make up the cellular structure of mushrooms. So pretty much all of our products, if it's just dried mushrooms or unless it's the powder, because the powder we dehydrate at 160 degrees Fahrenheit. That's active and ready to be consumed. But if it's like our other dehydrated mushrooms, we recommend that you still cook them. So don't just snack on them straight out of the bag.
Great stuff. Thank you so much for answering all those questions.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Is there anything else, Sharon?
I think that's it for right now. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I don't want to keep you too long from your business and your family and stuff. I think we've been going for about 2 hours now. So yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about though while we're here?
No, I just want to encourage people to continue to do the work in yourself to get yourself right. Like I said a few times throughout this, is like you're gonna have to do that work because it's gonna come for you. You either do it now or you do it at the time of your death, and that's fine. Put it off, but you can't take the baggage with you. And so if you come to the river and you need to get to the other side, you got a bunch of crap. The ferryman's gonna tell you, I can't take your crap, I can take you. So deal with it while you're here. Make yourself of use to yourself. If you're a person that's lost, like, this is your message. Do the work. It's hard, but it's worth it. And each step forward is forward. We had a token, and I can send it to you both. I think I gave you one, Sharon, is a little token that we had made for our wedding. And on one side is a labyrinth, and on the other side is a little saying that we came up with. And it's gratitude's the attitude, compassion is the action, forgiveness is the key, love is the door, spirit is the home. So you need to be grateful to be here, because it's the only place that you can be. So
Love it.
if you're going to be a you having your experience, be grateful for it, even if it's tough right now. Be compassionate in all of the things that you do, and have forgiveness for yourself firstly, and have forgiveness for others. But forgiveness really is a gift that you give yourself. Like, you have to forgive yourself, and you have to, if you're living forthrightly, then you don't have to apologize, because you're not going to do things that are offensive to other people. And I'm not meaning that just in like, oh, I stepped on someone's feelings and they're meh. Like, I mean, like, you're just genuinely being a good person. Then you don't have to ask forgiveness from other people, but you may have to forgive yourself for your own judgments, for the things that you have cast onto your own onto yourself, and then keep moving through the door of love to get to the spirit. And so do that work on yourself. It's worth it, because it becomes the point of resonance for our entire community.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. Amazing.
Yeah.
We're
love it. We're so on
Yeah.
the same wavelength.
Yeah, totally. And I would love one of those tokens. Maybe you could throw it in my next order that I make.
Yeah, 100%, man.
Yeah,
I'd like to place an order too at some point. So,
of course.
For sure.
All right, everybody. Well, let's say, I guess we could say hi to the chat. Thank you, chat, even though there's not one right now. But when we premiere this, there'll be a lovely chat of people who love to support us. And thank you guys so much for coming here. We do this every Thursday night at 8:33 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And, why don't you tell people again where they could find your amazing products?
Totally. You guys can find us at familyfungi.net. And if you kind of want to see a little bit more of behind the scenes stuff, you can follow us on Instagram at Family Fungi. And you can find myself on the Beartaria Times app at Brother Nature Bear. And you can find my wife, Elise, at Mother Nature Bear. She speaks often and very well about natural birth. And she is a birth worker, a birth keeper. And she supports women in their decisions and consults with them about the path that they wish to go on for their birth, whether it is natural birth or whether it is in a hospital. And she gives women support in being mothers. And so you can find us there. And I just want to say thank you, Brandon, and thank you, Sharon. Thank you so much for having me on today. And thank you, chat, for being active and for asking great questions.
Awesome. Yeah, you are quite welcome. We were looking forward to this episode, and it did not disappoint. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
And you can find us at morelawsmoreproblems.com. It's my website that I've had for almost 10 years now. Click on the Oversharing tab, and you can find us, YouTube. We do podcasts on Podbean, which puts it everywhere. So check it out there. There's also ways to support us, but we always say the best way to support us is just come hang out in the chat or comment and let us know what you think. All right. What do we say to the good people, Sharon?
But if you're not oversharing,
then you're totally not caring.
That's right.
Didn't we have something new we were going to say?
Yeah, I think we were going to say something about, dang it, something about if you don't stop no, I don't know. I don't remember.
We'll think of it next time. But anyway, guys, thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next week. Ciao.